This shouldn't take long to get. The other thing that we're getting we're sending stuff over to the Senate. Well, most of the product that we've done is, except now we may have added in the last day or so, and some of what we added is Senate to the bill, like a hearing. Bernie doesn't like hearing. Excuse me, Bernie loves hearing. Manchin doesn't want hearing in the bill and all that stuff. So some is Senate-oriented, and then we had the family medical leave. We figured if they're putting things in, then we can put something in, even if Manchin doesn't like it. So, so we are getting some bird and privilege. I think mostly we're getting privilege scrub, because privilege scrub is deadly to a bill. Birdable is important. You have to take it out, but.
Oh my God. She's so drunk.
I dream of going up to her and sitting down next to her, taking her in my arms and saying, "Look at me." Listen to me. You will survive. You will have a good family of your own and 3 children. And as hard as it might be to imagine, your daughter will grow up and become the President of the United States.
What, are you gonna cry now? Come on, cry!
My message to anybody considering coming to Los Angeles, especially during the holiday season, is don't.
A sobering and somewhat terrifying statement from the LA Police Protective League, the union representing LAPD officers. The message coming as a crime wave continues to slam the city and surrounding areas.
We can't guarantee your safety. It is really, really out of control. I said it to people before. It's like that movie Purge. Instead of 24 hours to commit your crime, these bad people have 365 days to commit whatever they want.
Is there anything religion can do to help?
Well, we could join together in prayer.
Uh-huh. But is there anything useful we can do?
No.
All right, what does military action mean, Senator?
Well, military action could mean that we stand off with our ships in the Black Sea and we rain destruction on Russian military capability. It could mean that. It could mean that we participate, and I would not rule that out. I would not rule out American troops on the ground. We don't rule out first use nuclear action.
You stupid fuck!
Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
Then strangled them, and finally dismembered their bodies.
Right. Then do and homelessness and all that.
And now, the voice you've been waiting for.
There is a secret song at the center of the world, and its sound is like razors through flesh. I'm here to turn up the volume.
This past week, the amazingly unfunny host of The Daily Show, Trevor Noah, found himself in hot water after simply making a joke about the conflict of interest for people telling you that the only thing that can save you is their product.
The guy who stands to gain millions of dollars from new vaccines says we need new vaccines. Look, I'm not saying that the CEO of Moderna is lying. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I don't think he's the most objective source on this topic.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
It must really suck to suddenly realize that your own fan base is so fickle and so ready to turn on you for something so minor. But I'm sure he's learned his lesson and this won't be happening again. In the future, he'll make sure to run things by the right people to make sure that there isn't any potential problems. I haven't seen anything on the news yet about the Sony executive that got fired. He was an executive from their PlayStation division, of course, and he made a little date with what he thought to be a 15-year-old boy. But when he showed up, he realized he was the target of a sting operation for a YouTube channel that goes after predators in the way that you would assume that law enforcement might. There's a few of these channels. The one that did this video was People vs. Preds, and there's DAP, Dads Against Predators, and there's a few other channels that will put out videos exposing people for trying to meet up to have sex with children. And I'm guessing we won't be seeing any real coverage about this on the evening news or on Good Morning America. I mean, they've been busy all week doing segments on Michael Strahan flying into space on one of Bezos' giant dildos. That's what they want us to talk about while we're standing around the water cooler. I mean, that's what people are really interested in, right? Not something like the CIA covering up its own people committing sex crimes. Everything from possession of child pornography up to raping children. Nothing happened, and nobody even wants to talk about it. This story is about 2 weeks old now and has gotten no traction. And that's because, what, nobody would have any interest in something like this? And now there's this news story about the former producer of Fredo getting in trouble and looking at 10 years to life for grooming and training young girls to basically be sex slaves. And the really sick part of this is that he was paying off their mothers to go along with it. He actually had mothers bring their children to him to be trained in the ways of sexual servitude. How quickly do you think this story is going to go away? But I'm sure it's probably for the best. I mean, of course nobody would have any interest in a story like this. Or a story about one of the biggest real estate companies in China going bankrupt. That was a story that first started coming out in September, and it hasn't gotten better. Ever since September, you've had a split of opinions on what this means for the Chinese and the world economy at large, with some people saying that it's completely irrelevant to what happened 14 years ago with Lehman Brothers collapsing and that being the kickoff to the Great Recession, and some people saying that this could be worse than Lehman Brothers. But most of what's considered to be the mainstream economists are saying that this isn't anything to worry about, that it's contained, that the Chinese government will be able to manage their way out of this. Of course, you got to remember that when Lehman Brothers collapsed, the Federal Reserve was saying the same thing, that this subprime problem wasn't going to be a issue for the economy at large, that they had it contained. And in retrospect, it really doesn't seem to matter whether or not they were lying or they're just complete fucking idiots, because it just basically means the same thing. You got to take what they say and their opinion on the situation with a grain of salt. But it reminds me of something that Gerald Celente always says: when all else fails, they take you to war. There's been major tensions building up between China and so many different parties recently. I mean, from Hong Kong and Taiwan to Japan, India. Hell, they were threatening to go to war with Australia and the U.S. and anybody else that was even willing to ask questions about the lab leak hypothesis. And you inject a major financial crisis into the mix, and who knows what you're going to get. But instead of focusing on that threat, we've been paying a lot of attention to Russia, threatening them over the Ukraine, which is something we never had any business being involved with in the first place. 7 years ago, we had a hand in overthrowing the democratically elected government of Ukraine and basically installing the person that we wanted to be in there. That was what was on that call of Victoria Nuland when she said, "Fuck the EU." That got leaked and reported on, but they made it seem like the major thing was the fact that she cussed and oh no. But really it was the fact that she was talking about installing a puppet regime into a country that we had already told Russia back in the 90s that we were going to keep our hands off of. Back in the 90s, we had a sort of informal arrangement with the Russians after the dissolution of the Soviet Empire. We agreed not to expand NATO into their sphere, and they agreed not to try to reclaim those territories. And boy, did we go back on our word. Places like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, all these Eastern Bloc countries that have since joined NATO and that we've had troop presences in for years. But then anybody that tries to criticize our government or say that that's a problem, oh, you must be with the Russians. It's the bullshit of the Cold War come full circle. Back in the 60s and 70s, that's how people would get shut down when they would try to criticize the dirty deeds that our government was doing by saying, oh, well, you must be one of those communist sympathizers. The same thing happened again in the 2000s with if you criticized what Bush and Cheney were wanting to do, oh, you must be with the terrorists. Remember that? You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And when France didn't want to go along with our invasion of Iraq, they had everybody wanting to say freedom toast instead of French toast and freedom fries. It's that same kind of false pride, patriotic mentality that evil, corrupt people in your own government can get away with doing things just by your inability to criticize them, because then you must be with the enemy. It kind of gives them an incentive for always having to have an enemy. And now we've come full circle back to the Russians again. Oh, the Russians are a big problem, yeah. A country that's bigger than our continent, with an economy the size of New York State or Italy. Yeah, they're really the ones we have to worry about taking over the world. It seems kind of hypocritical for us to criticize Russians meddling in our elections. Our country has had a hand in overthrowing dozens and dozens of governments, many of them legitimate, democratically elected governments. Does it make me unpatriotic to say that, to point that out? I think it's unpatriotic to be so blind and ignorant that you allow people to drive your country off a cliff just because it's not considered proper to criticize your own government. That's what this country was founded on, being able to criticize your own government. And if we're not willing to acknowledge and criticize the fucked up things that our government has done in our name, how can we expect anything to change, get better? It's just going to get worse. Burying your head in the sand is no fucking strategy. And having a United States sitting senator, the distinguished dipshit from Mississippi, going on Fox News and saying that, oh, well, you know, we might have to do a nuclear first strike on Russia if they go into Ukraine. All options are on the table. That seems like a monumentally stupid fucking thing to say. It's a complicated situation in Ukraine, with the western half of the country being more of Germanic descent and the eastern being more of Slavic. They've always had this kind of division, but we certainly didn't help things by overthrowing the fucking government back in 2014. And after all the quote-unquote regime changes that the U.S. has had a hand in since World War II, and the track record of how things have gone, you would think that we would have learned our lesson and kept the fuck out of it. But now here we are in a showdown with another nuclear power over a corner of the globe that we have no fucking business dicking around in, yet again. Economies all over the world have been teetering on the edge for some time now, and now with all this COVID lockdown. And now, on top of all the problems the pandemic has caused, a regional or new world war could be the perfect thing to pop that bubble. And from Central and South America to Europe to Australia, people have been rioting and protesting in the streets for months now. And it's really just a small preview of what we're going to see if some kind of global financial crisis happens, which it seems almost inescapable. Nothing ever got fixed after the Great Recession. We just kind of wallpapered over the mold and just kept right on going, pretending like it wasn't there. But it's grown. All the same problems are there, and they've only gotten worse. The bubble just got reinflated and pumped up even bigger. And now when it bursts, it's going to be catastrophic. And they'll be able to blame it on the COVID, they'll be able to blame it on whatever war has started, or maybe they'll be able to blame it on some Russian hackers who took down the power grid. Whatever they end up deciding to blame it on, it's not going to be the real cause. The real cause is the fact that the systemic problems that caused the financial crisis 13 years ago, nothing ever got fixed, nothing ever got done about it. They only made the problem worse. And all these people I hear saying shit like, I just want things to get back to normal. They better stock up on the diazepam and the Paxil, because shit's about to get really sad. Sluncha.
Thank you.
have in this world is my thoughts and my words, and I don't break them for no one. You understand? So say good night to the bad guy. So say good night to the bad guy. So say good night to the bad guy. So say good night to the bad guy.